specifically to talk about their impact on USB-C, because they were the first company that actually had a finished USB product line. There were a couple other companies that had little adapters, but they had a full product line addressing how USB-C, and Jason Torado was sort of the innovator of that back then. At least he's the person I knew of, was sort of innovating that. And I'd love to jump on this panel, because not only do we have Lightware part of this, but we also have Microsoft, who has some of the biggest impact on everything that we're doing today. First off, Roger, sorry for that's what happens when you're on live, man. Can't cover up live mistakes. Can't cover up flubs. And you and I had this meeting about this before InfoComm. How you doing, Roger?
I'm great, Gary. Thanks.
Hey, it happens. Jimmy Vaughn, I want to thank you for coming on from Microsoft. You all may remember Jimmy. Jimmy, tell me a little bit about your background before you got to Microsoft.
Yeah, I was actually an engineer for a number of years, introducing products with Crestron Electronics for almost.
I've heard of them. See, it's another company. Like all of a sudden, Roger, we got these companies coming up that are loosely competitive with what you guys are doing. But Roger, what you guys are doing is quite unique, and we're going to get into that in just a second. Bill, why don't you introduce yourself?
Oh, sure. I'm Bill O'Donnell. I'm with Rutgers University, and well, we've actually been implementing quite a bit of Lightware's Taurus line, and it's been quite a journey with USB-C as well. So.
Well, that's what I want to jump in on, because Roger, for those that don't know, there's a little bit of history behind this, but I don't want to go through all the history, but I'd like to start with Taurus and the impact it's had on our market, because it was the first product line, not just an individual. There were tons of companies, there were dozens of companies that came out with adapters that went USB to HDMI. Even Apple has a USB-C to HDMI adapter, and USB-C is really what we're talking about now, and the different flavors of USB-C and the impact that it's having. But you were the first company to have a product line built around, hey, USB-C can do a lot more than just output HDMI and output video, I should say. And really, you kind of had the vision for really building systems around USB-C that are doing some pretty innovative things. Why don't you talk about sort of the background of that?
Sure. It's great that Jimmy's on. Jimmy and I worked together years ago as well. And of course, Bill just mentioned that he's working with Lightware. So it's just a bunch of people I've talked to in the past that are all on the call here, which is wonderful. So our Taurus product, which is where we started with our USB-C, actually originated from working with Microsoft years ago. We had meetings before I joined Lightware, where we were talking to Microsoft about what they were looking for and what they needed in their rooms, and they brought up this USB-C connector. And at that time, we didn't have a USB-C product, and really no one had a USB-C product. And our engineers in Budapest went back home and developed a brand new product with all kinds of capabilities, specifically around what Microsoft said they were looking for at that time. And they said, look what we can do. And at that point, the Taurus product line and all the UCX products were born that had USB-C, HDMI switching, along with the ability to do host switching for USB, along with charging on there, along with network passing through all that single cable, which has grown into the product line that it is today, where we can do it now as a standalone, a point-to-point system, or over IP, as you mentioned, some of that over IP capability before too.
Yeah, and Jimmy, let's jump to you, because obviously now I know that you're not representing all of Microsoft here. You're representing the Teams Rooms group, and that's your expertise. But let's be honest, Microsoft had a big impact on all of this when they started supporting all their brands that support their operating system started outputting a USB-C instead of HDMI. And I think in the beginning, it was, look, it's an all-in-one connector and it takes up less space, and we're building these smaller devices. Like even Samsung was using it on their phones. Apple switched it to be on their newest phone. So you had the space requirements, but really it's more about a holistic view of systems than just the connectorization.
Yeah, the biggest jump in USB-C in our recent years is Apple. Apple doing it actually forces a lot of this into it. Now, Apple is still not the largest market share. The largest market share is actually Android. But you said it. It's about the connection that you have. Now, USB-C is a great connector. The challenge is in the feature set that it delivers. And that's really where a lot of this stuff sort of goes in. But like you said, we did it for Teams rooms for a simple fact. It can do a whole bunch of things. It's got the ability to do all this, but we actually rely on a lot of people to bring that expertise. You know, I'd love to say when you go to Amazon and you order a USB-C cable, you're getting a USB-C that you want to get, but there's actually a lot of different things that go into those cables and things like that. And that's where a lot of the confusion comes into play. And it's still confusing today for a lot of people. That's sort of where companies like Rogers will go ahead and make these standards and help these standards so that those connections can actually be implemented. Because really what we're talking about is getting a signal from point A to point B. Even look at Apple and the way that they did it. You're going to look at it and you're going to say, all right, this is my charging port. But there's so much more that can actually happen with that. But you're probably primarily saying this is my charging port. But like you said, what if I want to go USB-C to HDMI? What if I want to do all that? How do I know how to get in there? And what's that? Because it used to be in our industry in AV, this connector can do this. It's no longer like that because this connector can do so many different things. And the connector has to be purposely built for everything that you want it to do.
Yeah,
and actually, if I can jump in there,
yeah.
It's not just the connector though either. It's the connector. The cable has to be capable, and the product it's connected to has to be capable as well. So you can get a full-featured USB-C cable, but if that full-featured USB-C cable is connecting to a product that doesn't support video out, you're not going to get any video out of that product.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the challenge. You can't see those pins, Roger. You can't see those pins. You've got to actually understand what you're actually connecting to between the two devices, and then that negotiation has to happen about this is what I can do and this is what I can do, and that's where all that magic sort of comes into play.
All right, so you have this connector that is smaller than any other connector we've ever put on a device and has more capability than any other connector we put on a device. Bill, I want to ask you a question. When you let's in the university, you do everything. You have classrooms, but you also have meeting rooms, and you also have exhibit spaces, and you also have auditoriums, and you also have fantastic lobby displays, and you have athletics, and you have indoor, and you have outdoor. You literally have everything. Is USB-C? Is USB-C the perfect connector for everything, or what are you using it for? Where do you decide to go USB-C or AV over IP? I mean, obviously there's an on-ramp somewhere, but like are you sending USB from North Campus to South Campus? What are you doing?
So for us, a lot of times we tend to look at it of what's the most common connector that's coming out on your laptops. And for us, we're looking at it from the perspective a lot of times of faculty. So for that, it's your classrooms, your private conference rooms. We have auditoriums. And for that, we've been going a lot of times with USB-C because a lot of times folks will either have newer laptops or they'll have at least one common connector. And for us, that's our so to speak on-ramp point. Now, if you're talking going from campus to campus, no, at that point, then it's here we're using the USB-C that's getting us into our into a Taurus unit and everything. And from that, we're then harvesting all the rest of the room connections and everything, and sending it down through whether it's Zoom or Teams or WebEx. There are those folks who use WebEx still, but that's kind of our on point.
But the truth is, and I know this for a fact, that my MacBook Pro has 3 different outputs, and each port has different USB-C. And I think a lot of people don't realize that some of them have more power, for example, more actual power on them. And then some of them have more bandwidth, right? I mean, one of my ports, I can actually drive 2 monitors at the same time. But the other 2 ports, I can only drive 1 monitor at each time. And with the new USB specification, let me pop that up here in a second. With the new USB-C specification, we go to 4.0, USB 4.0. We're now able to do 4 monitors or 4 monitors at 4K and 3 monitors at 8K as that will come out. So that's sort of changing the way that you think about distribution, Bill, on campus. And Roger, I'm wondering if you guys are even looking at that and addressing that, and how do you deal with the different outcomes, because you're not a docking station company?
Yeah. So as we look at what we're getting from the laptop, we can only pass what we are able to get and what the display is asking for as well. So there's an EDID connection that's going on as well. Historical AV EDIDs to be able to do that. And when you said multi-screen, obviously we've been working on that as well, to have that single USB-C connection to be able to do multi-screen.
Yeah, like 2 outputs or 3 outputs on their devices would be something.
Yeah.
I know Microsoft wants that with Front Row, for example.
Yeah, so we've got that product. We showed it at Infocom and ISE this year, and it will be shipping in a few months.
What is the model of that product?
That is the Taurus UCX UCX 4x3 HCM40.
Okay, it's easy to remember.
On that one, yeah, it's easy. HCM40 is the key thing there, or the M version of the product for multi-screen.
Okay,
the extended is the way to do that.
Are you getting a lot of? I mean, it seems like you'd be getting a lot of requests for that, because we are seeing a lot more, even in meeting room spaces, where we're seeing the need for multiple displays, and sometimes now we're putting the camera in between the displays, going back to the old way of doing video conferencing, thanks to some of the things that Microsoft has provided, for example, in Teams rooms.
Yeah, the number of requests since Infocom has been quite nice.
Yeah.
So now we just have to deliver on some demos in order to show it to some people here as we get into the fall. So
and Jimmy, I'm gonna pitch a question to you, because I know a lot of people on here are doing UC spaces, right? Yep. At which point does Microsoft get rid of the HDMI requirement on the table and make it a USB-C requirement for Teams rooms, and then or would they make it a second option, or what? Because for that certification you have to have an HDMI right there on the table, but maybe it should be USB-C.
No, we actually don't have a requirement that it has an HDMI at the table. We do have an optional HDMI in. The compute needs to have that HDMI input. But when you're talking about Teams and things like that, we actually prefer people to connect through Teams and project that way. But the USB-C cables are really, really important when you're outputting to a display, when you're coming from the compute to the display itself. And you just hit the nail on the head. Those back channels, when you produce the PC, they have to have the buses to be able to actually send all of that data through there. That's one of the challenges that you have, is that if the compute, and Roger, we were talking about it before, if the compute doesn't have enough bandwidth to actually output all of that, when it does the EDID negotiation, it's going to say to Roger's devices, hey, I can only do this. Yeah, and that's really where we sort of see a lot of the USB-C coming from, is that we can get smaller and smaller devices because those connectors are smaller. They can have less power, but they'll actually be able to do more bandwidth and be able to output it. But they have to be built in a specific format so that they can do it. And that's where we're working with a lot of our manufacturers to actually make sure that those kind of things are on computers. And Bill, like you said, I mean, we're doing everything now to make sure that USB-C is on laptops as well, and that it's a standard. I mean, if you look over the past 5 years, it's been the Wild West on what's a connector and what it actually does out of there. But having standards on some of our new Copilot PCs and things like that, that's where we really want to get to.
Yep. And so Bill, you have to have run into the problems where, and it's not different just for USB-C, because HDMI had different flavors too, right? If you had a 1080 display and you're connecting 4K to it, and the display didn't have the ability, TV specifically, didn't have the ability to scale it, you just get digital snow. So it's not like every connector defined the standard. But when we went from VGA to HDMI, it was pretty obvious. You couldn't plug in one to the other. But USB-C, you plug it in, and as Jimmy said at the very beginning, a lot of people are thinking of that's a charging port, and when they plug it in, it doesn't charge. They're like, what's going on here? And in your case, you're using it as a display port to connect, meaning literally display space port, or it could be carrying display port too. But you're literally using it to connect to the system. Are you putting a bunch of little adapters on the podiums and saying, here, use this one in this case and this one in this case? Or are you doing some sort of education campus-wide? How do you deal with this?
We tend to do a little bit more education with everyone. In fact, I got to give Roger some credit on this one, in the fact that we really drilled down on, okay, well, I got this, this cable from, company XYZ or off of, post-it notes or whatever. And the thing is, if you go and get the cheapo cable, you really are going to get what you pay for on that.
Yeah.
And for us specifically, we go, here, guys, here's the certified cable that we've gotten from Lightware, and we know it works. We go through and we test it through in our lab and everything. We show everyone, and we go, it has to meet at least these data requirements. It has to meet these specs. They're like, you can go and get whatever cable you want afterwards if it breaks, but don't call us to say, oh, the system's not working, because we go through and we check and verify and go through the whole shebang about it, only because honestly, it's one of those things of, well, this is good enough. No, good enough is why I have to come back, or good enough is why I have to do like multiple service calls. And Roger's heard me say this before, but I'm very lazy. I'm so lazy, I only like to do the install once. But that's the thing where I try to be proactive about this.
All right, Roger, you're the expert. Tell us exactly what is on today's flavor of USB-C, which would be USB 3, I think, is the most common output right now. Or is it? Are we seeing even something more common now from some of the newer laptops?
Well, you've got, well, it depends on the laptop. It depends on everything you're going to connect to, and depends on video resolutions as well. I guess let's hold the resolution discussion, and let's talk about the signals that are on USB-C in most cases. Yeah, well, so in most cases, we're going to get video, and obviously USB-C, and for the most part, can handle up to 4K 60, 444 video quality. It can handle that USB 3.0, up to 20 gigs with no problem on there. It's not going to handle your 40 gig, high-end Thunderbolt 4. That's going through there at this time. You're going to get audio and video together. You'll be able to get charging on your power, which is amazing that you'll be able to get up to 240 watts potentially going through there, along with your USB traffic from all your devices and your hosts. And you're also going to have the ability to have Ethernet come over this, and potentially have a gig of Ethernet coming over this cable. And, I just look at this little cable and go, I can't believe that little cable that you can flip either way. So you're no longer flipping a coin and getting it right once out of every 5 times when you try to plug a USB-A in. But, it's all on that little tiny cable.
And so some of the newer laptops are now starting to get to deliver I think the M4s from Apple have the ability to have the 40 gig output. The new generation ones. Are you, Bill, dealing with that now, where professors are coming in and they're seeing? Because the first thing I noticed was an audio issue when I got my new laptop, where it was, you had the audio settings were too, the resolution was too high, and I had to bring the resolution down to make it work with the system that was currently installed. I didn't have video problems, but I also noticed that the resolution capabilities were much higher than what I was able to connect to. Are you running into any of those problems like that, or even where power's not coming back through because it's not available to them, or what are you running into, Bill?
No, for us, amazingly enough, it's not so much our faculty we have to worry about that from time to time. It's mostly our administration, because they always like to get the latest and greatest gadgets. And, what better way to beta test things when you're dealing with C-suite executives? So for the most part, though, we have been able to actually kind of streamline some of that stuff through. A lot of times we've been, we'll go through with our lab, and we'll go and check things against, how does this work with one of our codecs? How does this work with, our HD-based T extenders and things like that. For the most part, we haven't had major issues, but then again, there are certain folks who like to go through other third-party extenders that we've openly told, please don't use this, please don't do this. And then they get mad at us when they go, well, the color's now off. And I'm going, yes, because this thing has gone and done either a color shift, or it's not exactly playing nice with the EDID tables. So, we try to test as much as humanly possible, but, like I said, right now it's just simply our administration who gets the nice M4s.
So Roger, it's interesting when I went into the Apple store, the geniuses, quote unquote, there told me that bigger is better when it comes to USB-C cables. Like when I go to the Apple store, buy the thickest cable because then I can handle everything. The data speeds are faster. But I have found that that's not necessarily true. You can actually get a lot of cables that are just as good, that aren't the big fat white cables that Apple's selling. My question for you is, what is considered the standard distance limitation? Like, what is the limitation, and where do you start seeing things drop off? Or does it completely depend on the manufacturing quality of the cable?
All right, this is everybody's favorite question. You know, how far can you really go with USB-C? First off, the thickness of the cable has nothing to do with the capability of USB-C. That's the old monster
Softball
cable.
question to set you up there.
that's the new monster cable. That's the old classic monster cable. We'll make it thicker so that people think you can do things better. That has nothing to do with USB-C. So how far can you go? Well, the standard for USB-C, if you actually look it up and ask somebody how far you can go, is 2 meters, is what the standard says. However, that's not really how far USB-C can go, because we offer a 1 meter, a 2 meter, and a 3 meter standard cable. We offer a really nice 4 meter and 5 meter cable that are really nice and soft and feel really good as you move them around. And they work great up to 5 meters. You know, that's over 15 feet right there. And then we have an 8 meter and a 10 meter AOC cable. So we're going over some fiber and it's active. And those work well, and they even charge. Yes, we charge on a fiber-based cable. There is a jacket that has copper that provides 60 watts of charging to do that. And so we're getting 10 meters out of USB-C with full two-way communication over that wonderful cable to be able to do that. Now, you create other problems when you go into the longer distances if you're not at USB 3 speeds. If you're at USB 2 speeds, you create those hops. But we're not talking about hops today.
So let me ask you this: HD-Base-T came out with an optional kind of thing inside of HD-Base-T where you're able to send USB 3 longer distances. What are they doing, and how are they dealing with that? And what are we losing when we do that, or if anything at all? Because they even showed me one at InfoComm, a transmitter receiver that they're, as a prototype. They don't make hardware, as you know. They just are sort of setting the design standards. But they had a transmitter receiver where both fit in the palm of your hand. So what is it we're giving up when we do something like that, when we send it across HD-Base-T?
So it depends on what you're giving up. Depends on what the product is meant to do. So if it's just a point-to-point transmitter receiver that does USB, you're not giving up very much, unless.
So if I had a remote camera in the room far away, and I just wanted to send the signal from the camera into the compute device, I could use something like that.
Yeah, that'll work just fine to be able to do that. But if you want to be able to send your computer video on top of your USB, that's where you start to run into your problems. So like at Lightware, we're actually very close partners with SDVOE and Icron. And Icron's got a great integration where we're able to get that full bandwidth of USB 2.0 at 480 megabits, along with 4K 60 video, where some of the HD-Base-T2 and HD-Base-T3 isn't able to get that full 480 megabits on USB 2. So as we looked at it, we wanted to be able to do that and bring people that high-speed USB 2.0, even though we're not getting that super speed 3.0 across that connection at this time. We'll be able to get there on some next product revs, but right now that's what's available in the market. So,
Jimmy, I was going to ask you from Microsoft's standpoint, at which point do you get involved? Because you're ultimately at some point in time, someone gets blamed for something when it doesn't work, right? And so I often join Zoom and Teams calls where all of a sudden someone's joining and their camera doesn't work. Everyone says, well, it's Teams today or it's Zoom today, when in reality it's not. It's usually cockpit error or some other issue. When does Microsoft get involved in this kind of certification and making sure all the devices are working together? Because I know you work hard on the hardware side, but then the cable becomes a huge factor in that case.
100%. I mean, we're not, as we've seen with recent news, we're not outside of blame when things go wrong. A lot of companies will go, oh, it's Microsoft's fault. But to your point, of what you and Roger were talking about before, how long can I actually go with USB-C? I can give you 100-foot USB-C cable that just charges, Gary.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
that's just for charging. You know, there's all these things that go in. We don't set the standards. We actually work with our hardware manufacturers. They're the ones that actually make sure that everything that they do is inside of the standard size. When people open up tickets for us, even on the Teams room side, one of the things that a lot of our OEM manufacturers do is say, are you using the cable that came with the product? That's been a very, very common solution right now, is to ship the cable with the product, to Roger's point, to make sure that everything that you need inside of that product is delivered over that cable. And the challenge comes in, all right, what if I didn't? Where is that cable, and how am I going to replace that, and what am I going to do? Best thing to do is to actually go back to the manufacturer and say, hey, what are the standard cables that I need? Do you have a spec of the thing? And many times the OEM will say, well, I'll just ship you one so that you can have it. But we do have a technology that actually understands, is the camera getting the full bandwidth? One of the things that we do when we certify cameras is we actually say they must have a scalable video codec, which means that they have to be able to deliver a 360p all the way up to a 4K signal to the device, to make sure that when we're having issues, we can actually say to that camera, hey, send me a 360p video image, because I need to scale it down, because maybe there's a bandwidth issue. Maybe there's something happening on the device that the computer can't get that signal through. So all the certified devices are able to actually send different kinds of resolutions. But that's only when we can actually make sure that they work inside of a lab environment, and we actually do triggers to make sure that they send the right signals.
That's interesting. I did not realize that. You gave me some insight there that I did not realize, that you had that kind of real-time capability of managing all the products.
That's the power
that
of the
are
cloud.
certified. Yeah,
that's the power of understanding the cloud, because we do all sorts of analytics on the back end to say, what's the bandwidth? How's the call quality going? You know, inside of our Teams admin center, we actually have a full call quality dashboard where we can give you the device that may be actually causing the problems inside of the call. Many times people will blame the codec or the device that's inside of the conference room, but it has nothing to do with it. It's actually the Apple AirPods that somebody else is using that's introducing that reverb effect into the thing. But again, everybody will blame conference room because they hear it in the conference room, and that's where they want to put blame onto it.
And I do appreciate the fact that you have now standardized. It is okay to joke about what happened a couple of weeks ago, since you started out that
I haven't joked about it. All that I said is, you've seen that there is blame.
You kind of alluded to it, but
anything about any certain system, Gary. So understood. There is blame.
I don't know what you're talking about
on Microsoft a lot.
Well,
I am not referring to any specific instance.
As a user of Apple, I have no idea what you're talking about. I love the email that I got from my university. That, you know, when they talk about all the issues, the very last line was, "But if you have a Mac, you don't have to worry about this." But in any case, look, the truth of the matter is, Teams is dominating right now. Let's be honest. Microsoft is, you know, with their Teams solution, with Front Row and all the things you guys have done, you're dominating the UC space. You've transformed the meeting room. Integrators are selling Teams now. They're integrating Teams. It's more than a platform. It's become sort of normal in the AV space. Bill, as a fellow university person, I can tell you what we are looking for, Jimmy. And this doesn't have anything to do with USB-C. It should be a different session. We're waiting for Teams Classroom, so you can run a room with a team management system, sort of like you do meeting rooms. That's a whole different discussion. But I want to come back to Bill. Yeah. Do you still have the multi-adapter sitting on your podiums, where you have HDMI connector and a USB-C connector as well sitting there? And how do you manage, or how do you manage that otherwise?
So we actually have a lot of the Cisco tri-head cables here and there, where we have the your room kits, your room kit pluses, room bars, all that kind of stuff. And I openly tell everyone, when they go, oh, we're starting to see jittery video and this and that, can we get this replaced? And my first note that I tell everyone is, do you really need the multi-head adapter, or can we get you a set of adapters, and you hold on to those, and we'll get you a regular HDMI cable, because the cost to replace that specific Cisco tri-head cable of doom is a considerable sum, versus here's some adapters, here's an extra long HDMI cable, and here you go. So it's one of those things of, anytime I get a trouble ticket from one of the Cisco rooms, I'm just going, please may it just be an HDMI cable, please just standardize on this. but we
Then,
are
Joe,
trying.
Roger, there's an opportunity for you to layer something on top of that that'll be a solution. It's interesting because we're talking about a physical issue more than electronic issue. You know, back in the old days, we'd only have to talk about electronic issues. Now we're having to talk about physical connectivity issues. Roger, you've integrated both where I see us now, which is HDMI and USB-C, and AV over IP into a single product, the way that you're building that Taurus product. Do you see that as sort of like a hub? Is that where you see the future of this, as being a hub for connectorization and sending the signal out in any way you want to go?
So as we thank you for bringing that up. I will just mention something based on what Jimmy said before. We do ship with a USB-C cable in every box as well, so that when someone says it doesn't work, we tell them to grab the cable that came in the box and test it.
Thank you.
So, yeah, it's very important. So yeah, I mean, one of the things that we've tried to do, as you mentioned, that we have the standalone units where everything's within a cable length. We've got the extended units where everything's within 100 meters, and then we've got the over IP versions of everything that we do. We like to say we have a Taurus for that. The idea is that we want to give people that same experience regardless of the type of room that they walk into. So they walk in with HDMI or they walk in with USB-C. They can present, they can grab the USB devices that are in the room. They can switch back and forth between their MTR. They can switch back and forth between a room PC. Whatever happens to be there, they can grab the devices, bring them to their laptop. They can release them to go back to the device that's in the room. But the purpose of what we're trying to give them is that consistent experience from room to room, so that it doesn't matter which product they have, but Lightware will provide them a consistent user experience. The integrator will have a consistent experience setting it up, and the end user will, of course, have one platform that they need to worry about being able to monitor into whatever software they want with our open API.
So Jimmy, I mean, you've got a lot of experience being in the position that you were at Crestron, and now at Microsoft. You have a lot of data, so you have the experience and the data. I'm curious. I opened up the session with wondering, pondering if USB-C was a bridge to where we're going in the future, or if it was sort of like the hub of where we might be, where we might end up in the future. What's your opinion on that?
I think USB-C is a great technology that we have right now. I think, like everything, there's going to be evolving. I think you hit that nail on the head with an HDMI. When you plug in an HDMI, you hope that 5-volt pin is actually there so you can control the display over CEC. And a lot of those things are the kind of things that we see. I think USB-C, I think HDMI is saying all these kind of cables are doing nothing but moving us to a newer way of going. I think there'll be something beyond USB-C. I think the USB consortium is moving in great lengths to go forward. I think that there's a lot of stuff on the horizon that you're going to be able to see, and I think with everything that we're doing, the advancements are coming fast and faster and faster. So I like USB-C right now is a great solution. Do I think that's the be all end all? No, I think we got something beyond that, and I think we'll all be able to tackle it once it comes out.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you, and I know that Lightware is definitely going to be on top of it because they got some really talented people there. If you don't know who Lightware is and you haven't seen their stuff, go to lightware.com, lightware.com. Roger, thanks for joining me. Bill, awesome, thanks for joining me. Congratulations on all the work that you've done over there. Jimmy, I really appreciate you joining me. As always, I love the fact that you always are prepared with knowledge, but also you're willing to give opinions. I appreciate that. And as promised, I mentioned at the opening of this, I did an interview with Clint Hoffman on the show floor at Infocom, where we talked about the whole Taurus family and the concept of that there's a Taurus for that, which is what Roger was referring to. So I'm actually going to play that interview because I think this is a great way, a good overview of everything they're doing, and it's definitely worth watching. So spend a few minutes watching this real quick. Hi, this is Gary Kay. We're here at Infocom 2024. I'm here with Clint Hoffman, the president and CEO of Lightware. We're going to do a booth tour. For those of you who are not here at Infocom, this is a chance for you to see what Lightware is pitching and how they're kind of positioning themselves in the industry. But first, I want to congratulate you on your recent success, specifically around the USB-C products. And I kind of want to know, if I were running into your booth and I said to you, hey, I got to catch a flight, give me the elevator tour of Lightwear. What is the big message that you're pushing here at InfoComm?
Well, again, I think I love what you said. You know, we are the first people that I think pioneered USB host and device switching in the ProAV industry. We've been doing it since 2021. So that's the mainline message. We do it with a product we call Taurus, and it has 2 USB-C inputs. Well, this particular device has 2 USB-C inputs, 2 HDMI outputs, a bunch of USB inputs, and what you can do is then connect your laptop via USB-C, and a single cable is bringing you charging or power back to your laptop and taking your audio, video, Ethernet, and USB signals in the well, in both directions, quite frankly, the USB in both directions. Yeah. And this device then allows you to do BYOB in the meeting room simply by plugging in your USB cable.
Right. So ultimately, the in this case, the camera, the mic, the monitor, and everything is connected here. And this allows you to connect up, create your own sort of like ad hoc Zoom room, Teams.
Correct. And if this is my laptop and we walk into the room, maybe there's a room PC that's in place. I go in, I connect my laptop, and I automatically switch to my laptop, displacing the room PC because I want to present. Or you would put your laptop here, you take that cable, you plug it in, boom. Not only am I being able to present, but I'm also getting control of the USB assets in the room at the same time at my laptop.
Automatically, so you don't have to go in and change your camera settings or your speaker settings or your monitor settings.
Correct.
Any of that kind of stuff.
Yep, and so that's the Taurus. Taurus, and then basically this is the standalone, the first version we brought out, because if this is at the table, depending upon how far away your display is, you got to get the signal from the table to the display.
Okay. All right.
So then what we did is after we had the standalone unit, we realized that situation I told you about getting the signal from the table to the monitor. So what we did is we took the box and split it into 2. So now you have the transmitter at the table and the receiver part at the display. You can put it behind the display.
And is it one cable that goes between the 2?
One single SDVOE cable up to 100 meters.
Okay.
So you can plug in USB devices that are at the monitor, the camera or the microphone or whatever, and then it'll go over that SDV cable back to the table, and when I plug in my laptop, I will have access to those devices.
It's just like as if the box was sitting on the table. You don't have to do any configuration.
No configuration.
All right.
All right.
And this is what? The Taurus what?
We call it TPX.
TPX. Okay,
TPX. So we went from standalone to 2-piece that you can send over a distance.
All right.
We then said, okay, we have these transmitters and we have these receivers. What we're going to do, because we're SDVOE now, is we're going to put them into a 10 gigs router, and we're going to put everything into that, and we're going to create a topology, a network in the room.
Okay.
So say it's a divisible space or it's an auditorium, and you can route every US device in the room, every host in the room to wherever you want.
So you're creating a virtual matrix switch.
We've created a virtual matrix switch using the transmitters and receivers.
But you still have to have a network switch, right? It's got to be at least 10 gig networks, because it's got to be able to handle the bandwidth of SDVOE.
Yeah, but it's also designed for a space.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be putting this on your network. You're just going to be creating a network in the space.
Right. Yeah. So it's called an ad hoc network, basically.
And then there's a couple of things. We can do automatic switching over the IP, which has never been done before.
Okay.
And we can route, it doesn't matter, if you got 2 cameras in the room, we have 2 cameras here, I can route both those cameras to this laptop simultaneously if I want. I can have one camera follow a certain video somewhere in the system. There's nothing we can't now
So
route.
in that case, you would then have to go in and select which camera you want to show it at that moment inside
you have access to both of them.
Okay.
So you can route anything, USB or host, anywhere in the system.
All right.
And then we also made the switcher scaling, this particular receiver is scaling. So when I switch between sources, watch here.
Watch the monitor.
Yep.
So basically,
this is how fast it
you're
switches.
creating a seamless switch.
Yep.
Instant seamless switch.
Yep. In the bottom 3 row.
Yep. That's cool. All right. So what is that one called?
TPN.
TPN. Okay,
TPN.
So that's the TPN.
And we've coined a phrase, and it's important because we go right back to the beginning where you started about that's UC. We're coining the phrase UC over IP because that's what this is.
Okay.
The unified communications over an IP system.
I got you.